That's my old one. So that these two. Okay.
Okay, so I'd recommend everyone turn on your microphones. And then I would, if you guys are ready, okay. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll as we call to order this meeting of the Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee.
Chairperson Martin.
Here.
Ms. Chun. Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Two present, one absent.
Excellent. So we can begin our, I don't have the actual agenda in front of me. I know we have, I believe, 2 items.
Yes.
So you can let me know what you'd like to do first.
Sure. We have 2 items. The first item was the referral of the Literacy and Math Intervention Report to Subcommittee. Jeff Guazda, our Coordinator of Mathematics, and Melissa Newell, our Coordinator of ELA, are here to provide an update to the committee around how we are addressing interventions for accelerated learning at the elementary schools in both literacy and math.
Okay.
Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening.
I'm Melissa Newell. I'm the Literacy Coordinator, K-12 for Lowell. So the literacy programming that we're using in Lowell is based on the Department of Ed's recommendations for core components of literacy. So you will see those listed there. They have 4 categories: foundational skills. This is a pre-K through 3 graph, but we use it through grade 4 because it's the same needs, especially post-pandemic. So we have foundational skills, engaging with complex text, writing, and then oral language throughout. The link to the Department of Ed website where that comes from is at the top. But these are all of the skills that we need to focus on as it relates to literacy for all our K-4 learners. Here's what we have in Lowell. So you can see we have a robust group of products that we have purchased to help teachers reach the needs of all of our students. So for foundational skills, we have a phonemic awareness component. We're using the Hegarty program. We are using that K through 4. Grades K through 2 use it as core instruction, and grades 3 through 4 use it as an intervention for students who need additional support. We have shared reading, which is a practice done over the course of a week with the teacher and the students to help practice both reading skills and oral language. We have decodable readers that we've purchased for every single classroom, including our ELS classrooms and our special ed classrooms. Those are newly purchased last year and this year to address some of the needs that we're seeing for students, for them to practice in texts that are controlled. We have phonics programs that all of our students experience here in Lowell. Some schools use foundations, so some students might be learning phonics through that program. Some schools use Letterland. That's another program. The scope and sequences are very similar, but the schools had some autonomy to pick between the 2. We have Intervention Lexia Core 5. That can be used preventative or it can be used reactive as an intervention. It focuses on comprehension as well as phonics and phonemic awareness. And then we have Learning A to Z, which is a whole suite of resources that teachers can access, from books to giving to kids, to lessons, to science supports, to EL supports, to vocabulary supports. So that's how we have supported foundational skills here in Lowell. Some of those purchases are new since the pandemic. Engaging with complex text is what we want students to do as they become readers, and so we have a whole bunch of tools for that as well. Our core programming are the Teachers College Units of Study. These are the genre-based units where students learn how to think through text. They have opportunities to interact with text at their level, and sometimes that's decodables, and sometimes that's level text or authentic text. They have interactive read aloud. That's every student's grade level opportunity to hear the text that they should be hearing at their grade level and to do the deep thinking related to that. They talk, they listen, they read the same book multiple times. We've made purchases in the last 5 years to make those texts be very inclusive and match our students. We've purchased additional decodable text for the upper grade students, for the students who missed some learning during the pandemic. We have our science and social studies curriculum with inquiry practices and also come with text. So those are all of the ways we make sure students see complex text and text they can access on their own every day. For writing, we use the writing units of study. Students go through 4 to 5 units of study per year in various genres to meet the 3 standards: informational,
Be a real problem later.
opinion or argument, and narrative writing. That's our core program to reach all of our writers. We have foundations to help with letter formation as well as handwriting without tears. And then we have writing about reading. That is a response to a prompt based on the state standards that students do in K through 8, actually, using those authentic, inclusive grade level text. So hopefully you can see based on the headings that what the state has said we need to cover, we cover with these tools. Any questions? I just gave you a lot of information.
I was going to say, writing without tears?
Handwriting without tears, and they have a component keyboarding without tears, but we don't have that one.
Very emotional approach to writing, but okay.
It does start in pre-K, yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, by all means.
So I guess my question is, when these were chosen, what was the equity lens that was attached to them, the cultural appropriateness lens? And I say that because there have been obviously lots of studies about some of these things not being comparable to people of different ethnic or cultural backgrounds. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So that's been a real focus of mine in particular for the last 5 to 6 years. So the units of study does have a research paper. I believe Robin's accessed that in the past, saying that the units do meet the culturally responsiveness measures that the state of New York uses. And so we have actually looked at that same tool here in Massachusetts. It does align with what we've used to evaluate text. But the beauty of this kind of model is that students get to pick text, and we have made a concerted effort to purchase additional text, probably over $1 million, or I would say probably over $2 million in the last few years to make sure the text that we have in classrooms better reflect our students. So the interactive read aloud texts are all inclusive of the variety of our students as they're available. The breakdown of our population in the publishing world does not match our students. So we find as much rich, appropriate text that we can that focuses on the joy and the gifts that those students have, not these traumas. So we've made a really strong effort to make sure our libraries in the classroom reflect that. But then with the reopening of our school libraries, that has been the absolute focus of our first request when putting these through. So ways that we stay informed about choosing complex texts that are inclusive. I attend a ton of professional development with various networks to make sure that we're using titles. We have certain authors that we follow. We regularly check we need diverse books. So I feel actually really proud about the text that we have for our students and what they have in front of them, so that every single student that we have has at some point seen someone they can identify with in their text in their school buildings. Did you have a follow-up or any other questions?
Nope, not at this time. We can go to our next one.
So as a result of the pandemic and also some of the state guidelines as it relates to dyslexia screeners, we've made some adjustments to our assessments. So you can see we have 2 robust calendars. The reason I show them in this format is because it's a visual presentation. It shows you when we're assessing 3 times a year, as is the standard with most benchmarks. And then we're also progress monitoring the students who need additional support 2 other times per year. And we are now having regular data meetings to look at that data and make the determinations for what students need next. So combined with our rich curriculum tools, our understanding of how to teach reading, which PD has been provided for all of our K-2 teachers through this year, and our assessments, we can now better pinpoint what support students need so that all students aren't getting the same one intervention, which was sort of how it started when I came to this position.
I actually have a question about that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and this is, first of all, wow, about the calendar. So thank you for the visual. I'm curious, when you are kind of doing this process, is there at any point that you connect with like the school site councils? And the reason why I ask that is you're doing a lot of literacy work in the school. obviously some the work needs to happen at home. So I'm just curious how that's being matched up, or is that like an initiative, or is it something you're already doing?
Yeah, so I think that depends about the way the school runs their school site council. So we have, the 15 elementary schools. Every school has a literacy specialist. And so they're sort of the conduit between the school and the district. They report to their principal and work in their school buildings, but they come to meetings with me monthly to be professionally developed and learn the latest things and think about how to bring this work back to their buildings. So in some of those buildings, they have literacy nights with families and bring that work to them. But I could not say with certainty that every school does that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in terms of interventions, I spoke with you on the previous slides about the core products that we have purchased. These are the interventions that we have available to work with students. And the reason the list is so long is because of what I just said. The needs related to reading are varied across our student body, and we need to have a whole slew of products to reach those students. So the things that the district has purchased that have a cost are Lexia. That's, again, an online program, but it also has an offline component. Raz Kids, same thing. It could be an online individual component, but it also has offline things like text for students to read. We use iReady as a diagnostic for grades 1 through 8 for literacy, and so with that comes an instructional path if schools chose to use it for some kids. We have leveled literacy intervention, which is more of a comprehension intervention, and we've used that less and less as we've gotten better at some of the other programs. We have Hegarty Bridge the Gap, which, as I mentioned earlier, is phonemic awareness, so that's kids practicing to the sound correspondence. We have 2 phonics-based interventions related to the phonics programs that we have. And then through the special education department, they are providing different interventions for students who need it, including RAVO, various aspects of Project Read, Wilson, and Orton Gillingham. Those are specialized programs that require special training, so our general ed students most often don't participate in those ones. We do have some free resources that we're using, including the West Virginia Phonics, the structured literacy routines, including those from David Kilpatrick. Those have been brought back to the district as a result of coursework with the Department of Ed from some of our specialists and myself. And then sometimes schools are like, those still aren't quite meeting this exact small group of students, and so they've made a few purchases on their own. One of those is Read Naturally, that focuses on fluency. RAVO, some schools have chosen to purchase that to use with their general ed students and invested in the training for very small groups, and then UFly. So you can see we have a really rich picture of ways to support students, and we have the data to look at to see who needs what, and we have solid materials for core instruction. For literacy, because we know that what happens when they get to 3rd grade and can't read, it's really hard to recover. NAEP tells us that. We are hoping that interventions are always considered a double dose, so that students receive all of the same core components of literacy according to the Mass Literacy Guide that all of our students receive, and that their extra comes as an addition. And I'm sure that was probably far too long, so I apologize, but I love literacy and probably could talk for days. So I'll stop. Do you have any questions?
Yes, Ms. Doherty.
Thank you for this comprehensive assessment regarding our interventions. I think it's been so important as we've had huge gaps in our learning through this whole pandemic. And my question is really not related to the intervention stuff, but what we're using in terms of the actual teaching of reading. And so I've been getting a lot of outreach from teachers at all levels regarding the Lucy Calkins. And I know there's been a lot written about how it's really not the best way to teach reading. And I know we as a district have been invested in it for several years anyway. I also heard, but I haven't looked this up, that the state is offering some funding to switch off of that to go to a more science-based approach to reading. And I wonder what your thoughts are. Have you looked into what have been seen as, let's say, the failings of Lucy Calkins and what you think we should be looking at going forward?
Yeah, so first, I have tried to do this education for a few years now. Really, the work comes from Teachers College at Columbia. And so Lucy Calkins is an editor on the projects, but she doesn't write these units. Despite public perception, her units of study have only been out for under 10 years. So Sold a Story might be a podcast you've heard. The Science of Reading with capital letters from the Facebook group might be something you've heard. It paints a partial picture of what has happened. And so when you ask, have I been involved, and I smile, it's because I've been doing that work for the last 4 years, and I have a group where we've talked very tightly about this. The units of study are taught in a workshop model. And there is also research to suggest that they are supremely effective with our kind of population, high-need students who represent a variety of cultures. So in a workshop model, you're able to take the needs of the students and focus on what they need. You teach one lesson to the whole class, it's very brief, and then you work with small groups or individuals to use all of the programs that we have. So I like to say that Lowell has evolved based on everything I've shown you, from a balanced literacy model to a comprehensive literacy model. We are using the science of reading. You can see that in all of our foundational skills programs and the ways we've adjusted. You can see it in our assessments to reach all of those needs that students need. But at our core and at my belief, we need students to still continue to have authentic text and access to those things. So we have purchased the revised units of study, particularly for the lower grades, to meet the needs of students that have been revised using the science of reading. So we use multiple pieces to make sure we're meeting all of the expectations of the Department of Ed. The tools that the Department of Ed recommends are all evaluated through 2 avenues: Ed Reports, which is a foundation created by Bill Gates, and Curate. Curate evaluates things in Massachusetts, and you cannot be evaluated by Curate if you're not first evaluated by Ed Reports. Ed Reports measures basal readers. Workshop model and units of study are not basal readers. So you cannot measure the effectiveness with a tool that isn't designed to do so. And the problem that is with all of these programs that the state has recommended and that are on these reports are that if you look at all of them, they're lacking in cultural responsiveness. That is a bullet on every single report on Curate. The overwhelming whiteness of some of the programs are papers that have been published in research based on what is being recommended, as well as they still need to be supplemented with foundational skills phonics programs. So my argument for what we're using right now is that we've got so many rich tools that are really looking at a whole student and all of the components of reading. We are in compliance with what the Department of Ed has asked. We are hitting all of the pieces that they need, and we're trying to do what's best for kids without the bureaucracy of these programs getting in the way. And that is my unprepared speech for that, so hopefully that went okay.
That was an excellent response. Thank you so much. It sounded very prepared. And if I could just follow up with one thing. So what I'm hearing from our people in the field who are doing this work, it's not about the workshop model. It's about this using of, picture clues, like the focus not being on sound out the word, but what do you think the word is based on the picture?
Yeah, and that myth has been debunked in many vehicles in many ways across the city multiple times. So this idea that Lucy Calkins and Fountas and Pinnell are the only way you ever learned to read was guess the picture. That was an old strategy that they may have suggested, but that is not how we teach kids to read, and that has been revised 2 years ago. So we are not asking kids to guess the picture. We are hoping through our PD that the teachers are learning that students need to sound it out, and the units of study also have changed that language to reflect it. We do still need to think about, does this word make sense? Right? We still need to think about, does it fit this sentence? So those are parts of that 3 cueing system that were related to using a guess, per se, that we are holding on to, but we are definitely pulling away from that idea of look at the picture and guess the word. We're looking at, look at the first letter, what sound does it make? Look at the second letter, what sound does it make? Let's blend them together.
Well, I want to just, and I'll finish with this because I know you guys, we got to move on. I think it's important, and I do try to respond to what I'm hearing from the community. And I can tell you that the teachers I've been speaking with are current teachers, right? They're working with our younger students, our middle school students. So perhaps the professional development could be stronger. I don't know. You said you're meeting monthly with your literacy specialists and they're bringing it back to the school. And I realize that change and adapting as the program itself has changed might take some time, but it is on my radar because obviously it's very important, basic skill literacy. But I do value that the cultural diversity piece and the efforts we've made to do that, because I think that is number one in terms of engaging our students in what they're reading, is if they're interested, if they feel connected to it. So I see the value in that, but I'm hearing, these issues from current teachers. Thank you.
And so am I. And so here we are, trying to educate everyone about the ways that we're addressing that and making sense of it so that we can not throw the baby out with the bathwater and keep moving forward for our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's great.
Was there another question?
Any other, yes, Mr. Lay?
Chair. I hope I don't sound too pessimistic, but I truly learned something new today, and I just want to have my comment on it, and maybe you could answer my question really quickly. Looking at your presentation, I see a bunch of software that we are using to teach our kids, and from seeing that presentation, somehow I have a perception that we have students watching the video when they go to class, and the teacher may be just a facilitator about on the videos. Am I seeing that wrong? And I wonder what's the ratio between the videos and actual teaching happen in the classroom per day?
I can't speak to the ratio per se, but I can talk about those programs.
Yeah.
The only 2 that are online interventions listed are Core 5 and Reading A to Z, and those are used when students are off on their own. So if you can imagine a teacher teaches a lesson and the students are now going to do their work, their application of what they've learned, some might be reading a book in a small group, some might be reading a book with a partner, some might be reading a book alone, some might be getting a phonics lesson in a small group, and some students might be on a computer working through personalized online instruction. So there's not videos per se. We have purchased some videos to support professional development of teachers so they can see how to use Heggerty, but the teachers are the ones doing all of the work here. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Any other questions on this part?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Guazda.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Jeff Guazda, the K-12 math coordinator. So I'll talk about the math intervention. So first of all, my presentation sort of mirrors Ms. Newell's same kind of components. So for math, we use Eureka Math for K-5, and it too addresses all the components of the math, core math instruction that's recommended by DESE. The 3 components of mathematical rigor are conceptual understanding, procedural skills, and what they call capacity is also thought of as application. And then I laid out that within the Eureka curriculum, all of those components are addressed. So conceptual understanding, there is a section in each lesson that has a conceptual development portion. Procedural skills, there are fluency activities that are aligned to each lesson, and multiple fluency activities at that. And then application problems for every lesson as well that address the capacity issue. So then, like ELA, we have an assessment calendar. So we use iReady assessments, diagnostic assessments 3 times a year for all grades 1 through 5. kindergarten takes it twice in mid-year and end of year. And that data is used to drive, who needs identifying students that need intervention. We also have end of module assessments, so that's on the next slide, Robin. And so those vary by grade when those assessments are given, but some schools use that data coupled with iReady data and MCAS data to identify students who are in need of some sort of intervention or enrichment for that matter. So this next slide gives the multiple tools that are used to identify students. So MCAS data, iReady diagnostic, as I said, module of assessments, formative assessments in class, such as exit tickets, grade level teacher assessments, so teacher created assessments, teacher observation data, and then we have some different screeners that are being used. One is a consultancy, the name's escaping, but they're one-on-one assessments, but more for kindergarten, first grade students that a couple of schools are using as their primary piece of data to identify students. So in the elementary schools intervention, the models vary across the district. So pretty much everyone offers some form of intervention for K-4 students. So some are right in the math class. So some have taken up the idea of the math workshop model based on the literacy workshop, and it's the same teacher for elementary schools, so they see this model working in literacy, so they're trying to use it as an intervention in class with students in math class, as opposed to a completely separate intervention class, while other schools are still hanging on to that 60 minutes of core math instruction and 30 minutes of intervention. So it varies across schools, but schools do what they can with the time they have and the staff that they have. So the frequency, I put in just a little bit of math in there, that it occurs anywhere from 2 to 5 times per week. And then the duration also varies. Typically, most of them are about a half an hour session. There are some schools that have as little as 15 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. But again, every school is doing what they can with the time they have and the teachers they have. So people who are teaching the intervention varies widely as well. We have classroom teachers, special education teachers, EL teachers, tutors, and even math resource teachers, being brought in to teach intervention. The resources we use, we do continue to use Eureka Math when possible. Every teacher has access to all the grade levels below them if they need to dig into content that's prior knowledge for students or foundational knowledge. We also use iReady has an intervention component, an instructional component. 12 of our 15 elementary schools use a product called ST Math, which is not designed as an intervention program, but we found it to be very effective to build students' conceptual knowledge, particularly English language learners, because it's a completely visual program, so it's no reading involved. Some schools have purchased extra math or continue to use extra math, as well as a game-based program called Prodigy, and then some of our schools just use completely teacher-created materials. And then one program I didn't list on there that we have access to is First Steps in Mathematics, and we did a lot of training with that years ago. The program has since, it's not a program we can purchase anymore. The materials are free online, so we do have teachers who use those, but those are more like the consultancies where it's one-on-one assessment, so they're much more time-consuming to use, but we do have schools who are still using them. And I think that's all I have. Any questions?
Can I ask, when did Eureka come in?
2015 officially, 2015, 16 years.
So like 7, 8 years ago?
It was Engaged New York prior to that, so it wasn't a published program. It was free materials that were created as a result of the federal money that came from Race to the Top.
Okay.
So we ended up purchasing it in 2015, 16, and we've been using it ever since. And we're actually looking at, they come up with a new Eureka Math Squared this year, and we're looking at, we have a couple of schools sort of piloting that now and
See.
looking at purchasing that for next year.
Sadly, I remember that. Yes, Ms. Thompson.
So a couple of questions. I guess my first question, and this might be to both of you actually, is do we have numbers on where the students currently are standing with in regards to these interventions. So where are students? Are they behind? Are they at level? Where are they? And to Miss Martin's point, if Eureka for you has been used for 7 years, have we seen an impact in using the product?
So the first question was about the data. We do have data on every student. So the I-Ready diagnostic assessments give us data 3 times per year that let us know where students are above grade level, on grade level, 1, 2, or 3 years below grade level, and also identifies the content that sort of puts them below grade level. So it's really helpful in terms of addressing what content to teach and which students to teach during intervention. And then teachers, typically when a school will have an intervention, they'll have some sort of post-assessment to sort of measure whether their students have shown growth as a result of the intervention. And then the impact of Eureka. So I'm not sure that we have data that shows that it's made a huge impact. I know that COVID kind of came at a bad time. We were in our 5th year of using it, and I do think that we're getting better at using the product. I think teachers are much more comfortable with it, and we did take the state up on their offer to purchase materials last year, because Eureka is a high-quality instructional material as designated by the Curate Project and DESE. And so we did take them up on that, but we gave the elementary teachers the option to switch to a different program, and it came back that most wanted to stay with Eureka. So I will say, I don't have any hard data that says that it's shown impact, but I will, usually they say 7 years to show an impact for a curriculum, so we're right about that time now, so I think it's probably time to revisit and look, is this the right tool?
I would love, I'm not sure if I had to make a motion, but I would love to get some information about where our students are standing, just generally. Like, I don't need an entire breakdown, but just to kind of have an understanding of, in the district, are we kind of doing okay? Are most of them at grade level, or most of them behind? I think that would be really helpful to what Ms. Doherty had a kind of intention by doing this, having this come to the subcommittee.
Yeah, we have that. I mean, I thought about putting data like that in there, but I didn't want to overwhelm you. But
Well, thank you, because most people don't worry about overwhelming us. So I appreciate you.
We do also have literacy data for elementary in particular. We collect that multiple times a year. So we have DIBBLES, that's our foundational skills. We have Fountas and Pinnell, which is reading comprehension. And we have iReady. We use all of those to triangulate. We try to be strategic about when we're using what, so that we have a real picture of what students need and the various components of reading acquisition. And then we do progress monitor using DIBBLES. So all of our data, though, is now in a dashboard by Open Architects. So schools are using that real time for the first time this year. And that includes math data, attendance data.
So how do we get access to that?
That's
So that is the data office.
Okay.
So, the chief school officer, Mr. Skinner, oversees the data office.
Okay.
And that's how we get the KPI reports. And so
Okay.
forth. So, you may be able to even do
I think if we could get like a live presentation of it,
Yeah.
we could pull up the dashboard and be able to look at it. Yeah.
I would love to see it.
we just brought it in, the school committee voted to.
Correct.
fix it
Correct.
last spring.
There you go.
So it has been a great tool.
Excellent.
Excellent. Perfect.
That's it.
Excellent. Any other questions for anyone?
So is that it?
That is a motion. Yes.
To get a data
A
presentation?
motion to get a data presentation, I guess. Sorry.
There you go. Yep, we can, absolutely.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda tonight is the high school update on the health program. And the day that this report was sent to subcommittee, the student government came to that meeting just ahead of our school committee meeting. And Ms. Thompson referred their meeting to the subcommittee as well. So this is the update. We did, last time we met on this issue, we did, I believe, agree that we would have a pre and post test of our health students, both in the fine arts program and the traditional health track. the pre-test has been given, but based on the time of year currently that we're in, the post-test has not. So this will be a report of progress as to what has happened with that program since it was put in place this fall.
Excellent.
Okay. And so Jessica Daviso, our Fine Arts Department Chair at Lowell High School, is here, as well as David Slattery, our Physical Education / Health Department Chair, to collaboratively present what work they have done together on this topic.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Slattery, Academic Chair of Phys Ed Health and Wellness. And Mrs. DeViso and I are here to give update and status on the integration of health in our wellness program. So, next slide, please. When we look at the numbers in terms of students that are currently in performing arts classes that is incorporating health, we have 368 students. 165 of these students are grade 9 students, and it's about 200 students total that are taking these classes to fulfill their health requirement. All health content is aligned with the Massachusetts Comprehensive Health Framework. Health teachers and teachers from the fine arts, the dance, band, and show choir, have met and continue to communicate to ensure our curriculum maps are shared, lessons are aligned, and lessons are delivered with consistency. This collaboration has taken place before school and during our professional development days. I'd also like to add that Mrs. DeViso and I have both co-observed these classes, both in traditional health class as well as in the performing arts classes. Our collaboration in that will continue.
This next slide shows some pre-test and Q1 report card data, both from the Health 1 and 2 classes and the Performing Arts Wellness classes. Again, health and performing arts teachers worked collaboratively to both create and then administer a pre-test in all classes. And you'll see that this pre-test shows pretty consistent results across all of the content areas. And then additionally, that Q1 report card data shows favorable pass-fail rates with approximately 90% of students in health and show choir passing, 86% of students in health 2, and 93% of students in band and dance. This next slide highlights a collaboration between the Performing Arts Wellness classes and a community partner called Teen Block. And so students in the band, show choir, and dance classes brought Teen Block into their classroom to deliver a unit on human sexuality and reproduction. And you can see the list of topics that were included in that collaboration. And it really was a wonderful experience for all of the classes. Teen Block has shown a commitment to continuing this partnership and even expanding the partnership. So they've offered those services across the entire range of health and wellness classes for the coming school year. The next slide just shows some other highlights from the Performing Arts Wellness classes, just so you can see a little overview of some of the products that are coming out of those classes. So on the right, you'll see a number of student-created research projects that covered a range of health topics. And then on the left are photos of students learning about nutrition and the brain in their dance class, and then working in small groups on some discussion topics. So far this school year, and again, they're only halfway through the course, students who are in those Performing Arts Wellness classes have covered topics on the health triangle, body systems, nutrition, again, human sexuality and reproduction through that Lowell Community Health Center partnership, and they're now starting a unit on drugs.
Some additional highlights. We've renewed some past relationships. So due to COVID, our partnership with the NAM project was postponed, but we've since reestablished this this relationship. NAN team members have returned this year, and they're back for a second visit, currently in our classes this week. Moving forward, we want to expand these awareness presentations to the point where there's already been a set date scheduled in March to have the NAN project and their team members come in and provide these presentations to the teachers, to the performing arts teachers, so that we'll be better prepared and we can expand the NAN project into next year across multiple different content areas within health. In addition to the NAN project, early last fall, LHS graduate, Dr. Dimitri Rizos, reached out to us. And he's an internal physician, and he works very closely with the American Heart Association, and he's the lead advocate for hands-only CPR. And what he and his team members are doing is they like to go into schools in multiple districts and provide this awareness and training to students and staff. And some photos are up there. Students were very receptive to it. It came together last second, but it was a huge success. We were able to get Dr. Rizos and his team to be in front of 6 or 7 health classes. But we want to expand that this semester and into this spring, and obviously moving forward, incorporate and expand these presentations into our performing arts classes as well. So we're excited about these new partnerships and our renewed partnerships as well.
And this is our final slide. It just outlines some next steps for what to expect during this semester. Again, thank you for giving us this trial year to fully roll out the health and wellness program in the performing arts classes. We're definitely going to report that post-test data when we have it available this spring. But in the meantime, we're going to be providing some additional PD opportunities and continuing to build that collaboration between the teachers across departments. And of course, our co-observations will continue through the end of this school year. And we're happy to take any questions that you might have about anything we presented or any other questions you have.
I have a couple quick questions, and then can anyone else wants to jump in around the pretest data. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So we've got the comparison, the Health 1 versus Health 2 pretest data. Is that just that's the course itself?
Right, those
Okay.
are two different courses. So Health 1 and Health 2 were two different tests.
And are we comparing the students who are going the traditional, getting that traditional health instruction versus in their fine arts programming?
Yes, and you can see it shows an overall score.
Yep.
And you can see the Health 1 average score, and then how the students in dance, show choir, and band scored on that same pretest. And then Health 2 is taught in certain levels of dance.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be taught next year in band and show choir.
Okay. I'm sorry?
If we're able to.
Oh, okay. It was just off to the side. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure as I'm comparing things, I'm comparing apples to apples. So it's different content though that's included from Health 1 versus Health 2.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not comparing. Okay, that was my question. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't comparing them across as opposed to. Any other?
Just in there.
What we'll be comparing?
Yes, exactly. So the post-test data, the post-test is identical to the pre-test.
Uh-huh.
So you'll actually be able to see student growth over time. And that will be unique for each of the classes, whether the students are taking the class as Health 1 or as Health 2.
Okay.
If I could just follow.
Ms. Doherty?
So just to clarify further, when we look at the Health 1 pretest data, you're showing us based on Health 1, those are the people taking traditional Health 1 classes, dance, so they're working with the same standards that the state expects us to teach, and the test is the same.
That's right.
So how do we, I think this was always one of the struggles for me, that they're going to just get less time on learning, just by the fact that it's part of a dance class and health is being added. How do we account for the loss of time to keep the learning up? What's been the methodology behind that?
So one of the important things that we did in implementing this school year, health is a single semester class, whereas a class like Dance 1 and 2 is a full year class. So although they don't have the same time on learning, they're not doing health every single day, it's spread out over an entire school year rather than just a single semester. So that's one strategy that we've used to ensure that kids are getting the right amount of time on learning.
Thank you.
Is there any more questions? Beautiful. Thank you very much for coming in. I know that we've been talking about this a great deal, but I do think that the pre and post testing for me is kind of the crux of it. Just when we're able to kind of really see the way these numbers translate at the end of the year, I think that's really going to tell us, if this experiment, this pilot has worked. So looking forward to seeing those results. If there are no other questions, I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, you're not there. By Ms. Yeah.
I just would like to make sure that Ms. Desmond is prepared to have a curriculum subcommittee meeting sometime in the near future regarding the middle school sex education report that was provided to us a while ago. I thought we were going to get that tonight, so that would just be.
Maybe we can talk at this meeting about what it is you're looking for outside of what was reported.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night. So, by Ms. Thompson, seconded by me. All those in favor say aye. I always agree with me. No.